time it is. It's autumn time. That's what time it is. It's September. The nights are drawing in, as you can probably tell, because we're under artificial lighting again. It's not 8 o'clock yet. It's getting dark and gloomy and the winter's coming. So, time to cheer ourselves up by looking through some more vintage White Dwarfs. This is going to be the last video where I'm going to be looking at 2 White Dwarfs that are a decade apart. Ah, sad, boo. No, not because I've run out of magazines. I've got plenty more magazines, and in fact that's part of the reason I've got so many magazines. But the other part of the reason is that October, that's next month, right? October 1995, the next issue to this was the first ever issue of White Dwarf that I got. And I subscribed to White Dwarf for probably not that long, probably 18 months, 2 years, something like that afterwards. And so I have loads of fond memories, and I know those issues really, 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 really well. You'll notice from the next episode that they all start being a bit more dog-eared because they've been so thoroughly read and reread and carried around over the years. But what that means is that I feel like I've got plenty to do an episode on those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an 80s White Dwarf, and then I'm going to do a White Dwarf 5 years later, because there's a big enough difference. 5 years is already, we're already in this format 5 years after this issue was released, so there will be plenty of differences to look at and discuss. So we're going to do an 85 and a 90 White Dwarf, and then we're going to do a 95, one that I remember well and have personal recollections, and there'll be lots of reminiscing about and nostalgia for me, which may be really boring for all the rest of you, but I'm looking forward to it. So then, no video. So that's what I'm going to do. It may be that those 2 videos, alongside the Warhammer look through that we've been doing, because that's 3 videos out of the normal 4 that I would do from up. So maybe that is too much, and there may be times when I have to rush through and do them all in one, or postpone doing some for a bit, or we have to drop off the Encyclopedia Warhammica for a little while. But I'll try and keep it up, and of course there may be some interesting stuff for Oakbound that I need to throw in there as well along the way. But anyway, there'll be plenty of content for videos. They may need to be under artificial lighting. Dark evenings may mean that I don't get to record as much as I might want to. Who knows? This is for fun, right? So we'll see where it goes. But that's the plan anyway from next month, to do 5 years apart and then a 1995 one by itself. But let's crack on now, looking at these 2, which are a decade apart, September 1985 and September 1995. Well, alrighty then. To kick us off, let's have a look at White Dwarf issue 69, September 1984. 1985 rather. Cover. An interesting cover. This cover is by Mark Bromley, and this is an illustration from Out of the Pit, the Fighting Fantasy book. Interesting. It's a bit dark for Fighting Fantasy. I don't normally associate Fighting Fantasy with this kind of... Yeah, maybe I do. Torture and... Yeah. He's some kind of drow, is he? I don't know. I don't actually have Out of the Pit. I should get a copy. It's an interesting book. I have played Fighting Fantasy as a role-play game, and it's quite entertaining, quite interesting. Citadel's final open day, a final of the year, final ever, not sure. But there you go, it's Citadel's final open day. And Ian Livingston is looking forward to Games Day. It seems hardly believable that this bustling gathering of thousands had its humble beginning in 1975 meeting of a few hundred games players. A few hundred for the first meeting? Wow. I wish our actually I don't wish our first Oakbound Open Day had a few hundred. It was nice keeping it small, but yes, it would be nice to have a few more people. Here's what was going on. Here's what Ian Livingston's looking forward to. Chris Achilleos with his Middle-earth roleplay artwork. Ian McCaig, wow, doing a drawing workshop, fantastic. Marcus L. Rowland discussing Call of Cthulhu, the Sorry Enigma published in this issue. Yeah, okay, all right. Figure painting by Tim Olsen. Ian Livingston running a Games Day auction, selling off his collection of old figures, including apparently an issue 1 of White Dwarf was auctioned at that time. Simon Burley and Pete Haynes discussing Golden Heroes, Steve Jackson chairing a Games Day quiz, and Tony Ackland displaying his artwork. So, not so very different to Bring Out Your Lead then in its content, just a few more people possibly. Here is a way of dealing with character advancement in general, but discussing the way that Golden Heroes does it, and thinking about why this would be a useful way of doing it for future, for other games. Thinking about encouraging role-playing, encouraging realistic, inverted commas, character development, rather than optimized character development. Having not played Golden Heroes, I can't tell you how it works, but it sounds like an interesting idea. Part 2 of this underwater D&D. In the last issue, they were looking at the kind of issues that you might have to come up against if you want to be underwater for any great length of time. And here they're talking about what kind of civilizations might look like under the water, which is interesting, looking at how they might survive, how they might live, what they might do, what their architectural features might be. But it does seem to be very much taking Turanian, is that a good word? Yes, I guess, land-dwelling settlements and civilizations, and trying to see how those might work under the water, rather than coming up with something new and exciting that might be particular to living under the water. So I guess I feel like it could be a bit more out there, a bit more outside the box than it is. They're reviewing Toon, Strikes Again, the supplement to Toon, Conan, the role-playing game, which doesn't get a particularly high rating, I'm afraid, and some games that I've not come across. Chill Blackmore Manor, which sounds a bit like a less good version of Betrayal at House on the Hill, and some Marvel Superheroes supplements. And now I wouldn't normally delve too deeply into Dave Langford's critiques of books here. Dave Langford known for being rather scathing of most books, but I do notice at the end here that he's got a very apt discussion of Terry Brooks's Shannara trilogy, because The Wish Song of Shannara has just come out. I shall read it to you. Terry Brooks' The Wish Song of Shannara concludes the trilogy of an author who, unlike Tolkien and Hambly, can take the most powerfully magical fantasy archetypes and, within a single touch of his style, transform them into rotting hulks of cardboard. Yes, I'm not a big fan of Terry Brooks either. That, having read some of the Shannara Chronicles, that very much sums it up to me. Here we discuss close, it says close encounters, but actually close combat, really. The differences between effectiveness of weapons at range, particularly geared, as you might be able to tell from this picture here of a man reading a book with a wolf looking over his shoulder. This is particularly geared to animal effectiveness of animal attacks at short and long range, or not even really long range, like medium range. Yeah, interesting if you like your combat system extra granular. There's some good suggestions in here. Thrud the Destroyer, part 7. This is where I was expecting a climactic battle. But actually, it seems like the battle is over in the first panel of here. Run away, run away. The mercenaries are getting a hammering. And so Thrud and his recruits are left wondering about how they're going to get paid. And they acquire a golden statue, and the people who came to recruit Thrud to look after their village, rescue their village, are left with no village and no money and no golden statue, and regretting their employment of the barbarian and his team, of course. Here is that Sorry Enigma, a Call of Cthulhu scenario from Marcus Rowland. This, yes. So the investigators have been recruited by a newspaper to go and investigate some rumours of witchcrafty goings on. And there aren't really any witchcrafty things going on, spoiler alert, in here, but there are some other investigators at work. I am a little unsure about the start of this adventure. It feels like there's a very... there's one route into this adventure that if the players don't immediately latch onto, they're not going to be led in this direction. And it's not a particularly notable event. It's the kind of thing that you would probably ignore even if you were in the 1920s. It's not a very significant event. And I feel like as a games master you'd have to really sell it. But fortunately there is another way that I think that they could be drawn into this, which is just to have them break down in their car in the middle of this village. I feel like that would be a more appropriate way of getting them involved. But it's essentially it's a treasure hunt, and really I don't think they're going to find out very much for their newspaper. So yeah, it's a little at odds. I feel like you're setting adventurers up with a particular set of expectations and then giving them something else, which is totally fine. I'm all good with that. But it's giving them something that's so different, they probably wouldn't recognise it and would carry on straight through the village and go out the other side looking for something else, and you miss the entire adventure. But there you go, what do I know? I'm not Marcus L. Rowland. This is an AD&D adventure, and it says here on the front cover that this is a prize-winning AD&D scenario. Well, in fact, this is the AD&D scenario that, if you remember this map from a few issues back, quite a few issues back in fact, there was a competition to write a scenario around this map, and this is the one that they've picked as the winner. So prize-winning, yes, in the sense that they liked this best. And it's quite entertaining. There's some quite novel ideas, but it's also a fairly classic AD&D adventure. It's an evil wizard trying to do some nefarious deed, which the adventurers, because they're just adventurers, not because they have any real need to, may want to step in and protect the village from. But it's nice. There are some red herrings and some interesting other avenues for exploration that they could go down as side quests alongside the main quest. So I think it's worth checking out, this one. Ship combat damage for Traveller, and the Travellers gets another blurb rather than a comic strip, which actually I prefer. It shows the artwork off a lot nicer. You can see the progression, you can see the artwork, you can read. I mean, this is pretty bland, but as a way of presenting Travellers, I guess maybe once they've run through all the characters it will go back to being chaotic. Here's some characters. Fiend Factory, having apparently run out of ideas for D&D monsters, is now producing ideas for superheroes for Golden Heroes. Something a little bit different, but not something that interests me very much. His Tabletop Heroes article is talking about where you can find examples of painted miniatures and displays of painted miniatures, and it mentions a few shops like Games Workshop's store in Dowling Road, Hammersmith, where Tim Olsen's fine collection of paintings is on display. The Games Workshop store in Sheffield, renowned for the inspiring figure displays of Pete Berry and his staff. And Gamers of Liverpool have an impressive display of Grenadier miniatures, apparently. Are you involved with any of those? Do you see any of those? Were they that impressive? I'm sure they were. Here are some fine photos of some fine dioramas. This one features the Sauron throne with the actually lidless eye, although it's painted and looks quite benign here. It reminds me of, did you ever see Trapdoor? There was an article, not an article, there was an episode where him upstairs, his eyeball fell down the trapdoor and Bert had to go and find him, and it reminds me very much of that. There's a Gandalf, there's, what's his name, Shakined Bonebender, that wonderful troll here, love him. Some giants and some bears, not so exciting. And hovels buildings with a Legolas stood in the middle of. We do like hovels, fine buildings, and a Balrog, slightly fiery looking Balrog there. Discussion of easy to use poison categories for AD&D, and then Gobbledygook gets an entire page to himself to go exploring in a tomb, and quite right too. We like these longer format Gobbledygook cartoons from Bill. Very entertaining, much more entertaining than Travellers. More Gobbledygook, less Travellers, please. There's some fun things on this page you wouldn't really be able to see because they will be they're small and hidden away, but apparently Iron Crown Enterprises are releasing 2 volumes of do-it-yourself Middle-earth roleplay game books, The Knight of the Nazgul and Legend of Weathertop. Anyone played those? Anyone come across them? Did they even get published? Who knows? Here is that mention of Out of the Pit, with the art obviously on the cover. And down here, a competition to win a copy of Dragon Warriors by unscrambling this code. Again, did Dragon Warriors do anything? Was it worth writing in to win a copy of? Who knows? I don't know. I never played it, certainly. There we go. And we get to the end of 1985. Right, let's move on to 1995 with this very fine cover here also. This is the Witch King from the Catacombs of Terror expansion for Warhammer Quest. Fine painting. Is it a Mark Gibbons painting? Oh, it's David Gallagher painting. There you go, David Gallagher painting of that. An excellent scenario pack, excellent miniatures. Not going to have any discussion of it in here. I feel very influenced by the Return of the Witch Lord pack in Hero Quest. They did Kellar's Keep, which was greenskins, and Witch Lord, which was undead, and here we've had Lair of the Orc Warlord and Catacombs of Terror, a greenskins and an undead. There you go. But I don't think there's any discussion of that in here. We'll get something completely different for Warhammer Quest. Here we are, the first mention in White Dwarf of Necromunda. It's coming in the next issue. We know how special the next issue is. It was my first issue, and yes, it had a free miniature on it, and it was Necromunda. And so, yes, exciting times. Trollslayer was released. This is an Ali Morrison sculpt. You know how last time I said, oh, I thought they were all Gary Morley, and one of them was In fact, Jez Goodwin. This is an Annie Morrison sculpt, so there you go. Not all Jez Goodwin. Sorry, not all Gary Morley. This one is definitely a Gary Morley though, this Blood Bowl figure. And here are the Games Workshop team wearing silly foam orc masks and firing longbows. Sounds like a good day out was had by all. The Beast Order Rakarth gets released for the Dark Elves, big Dark Elf character on a massive stonking great dragon. Excellent stuff. There he is, look how big he is. Look how big he is, huge, 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 huge. Probably not huge by comparison with today's figures, but certainly back in the day, huge. And an appropriate size of huge. It wouldn't really want anything more huge than that, because where on earth do you put it? The Imperial Assassins. The Vindicare, not the coolest of the assassins in my humble opinion, but nevertheless quite a cool snipery assassin, first of a few. With his War Gear cards. We get some discussions of Tyranid Biotitans, or Tyranid Biotitans, whichever way you want to say it, and how they can best be used on the battlefield, these spidery monstrosities. More Dark Elf discussion, the Dark Elf Armies book having recently come out, and of course we had the Witch Elves and Executioners and things in the previous issue. Now we've got Beast Order Rakarth and some Cold Run Knights riding their little dinosaur-y things into battle. The Imperial Griffin, another kit for the Chimera. This time with a big fat mortar on the back and the rules for using that, data cards and so on and so forth. Here we have a discussion of the use of heroes in Warhammer. Now, if you saw in recent weeks my discussion of Warhammer 4th edition, my flip through of Warhammer 4th edition, you will know that this is the era of Hero Hammer, that this is all about big heroes on big monsters. Well, this article does tell you that it is all about that, but it's a bit more specific on the use of them, and it does mention the use that units and things have and war machines have in conjunction with them. So it's ways of dealing with the big heroes as well as ways of using them to maximum effect. And here we have our Warhammer Quest article, The Darkness Below. So in this case, this is about mixing up how you set up your dungeon deck to theme it in a particular way. With Warhammer Quest, you generate your dungeon as you go along by drawing cards from a room deck and an encounter deck. And this gives you some suggestions for stacking those decks in a certain way to give you a certain kind of feel and flavour to the adventure, which is good advice, because you don't always want to play a completely random adventure, do you? You want to have some particular flavour, you want to kind of know what quest you're going on before you go on it in some cases. And then here we have a Warhammer 40,000 Tyranid battle, because the Warhammer 40,000 Tyranids are coming out fresh. We had some discussion of them in the last issue. Now here we're going to have a battle report showing them. You can see some of the range that's new here. The Hive Tyrants are here. What are they? I forget what these little things are called. These are Termagants, right? Termagants and the Hormagaunts. And the Gargoyles are fairly new, alongside the classic plastic Tyranid warriors that had been out for a while at this point. The Carnifexes have been out for a while at this point, and of course the Gene Stealers there in the middle, but looking a recognisable Tyranid brood and controlled, of course, by Who else? Needs no introduction. Having written all the rules for them, you'd hope that he would be able to control them effectively. Now we have a new release, Tyranids, fighting against Eldar and Imperial Guard. Joined up. Now the Eldar are not that old at this point, this version of the Eldar at least, and the Imperial Guard have been slowly trickled out over the last few months, so you wouldn't necessarily expect that the big flagship new release Tyranids would just stomp all over everybody else and prove how great they are, would you? You wouldn't necessarily anticipate that. Oh. Yeah, okay. Massive, massive victory for the Tyranids. Very clear victory for the Tyranids there. There's some tanks, and some Tyranids, and some big dragon. Big dragon. Plastic wings now though, using the talisman dragon lord wings. Good, because pinning these in metal, they'd have fallen off really quickly. But the rest of the dragon there, not using any of the plastic body bits. The rest of the dragon is all metal. There we go. And what have we got on the back here? Imric and that crazy Chaos Dragon that we saw a few issues back. So there we go. Always seems to take me much less time to go through the 90s White Dwarf, but that will change, I'm certain, from next month when I have all of my own personal reminiscences to throw into the mix. So I hope to see you then for that. Do like the video, do subscribe, do hit the notifications button, do leave me a comment, particularly if you have any reminiscences yourself about any of these things. And then I will see you. I will do not a poor Sean Connery accent. I will see you next week for something else. Take care.